Princess Zara sat in her room and stared out the window at the dark space beyond. Stars twinkled like tiny diamonds, but they brought her no joy today. In 3 hours, she would meet the alien she was supposed to marry. She did not want this marriage, but she had no choice. Her father, Emperor Vorthak, had made the deal months ago. The Xerian coalition wanted an alliance with her people, the Kelthar. The Xerians were strong and cruel. They conquered planets and turned the people there into slaves. Now they wanted to be friends with the Kelthar Empire, and the price was simple. Zara had to marry one of their leaders. Zara touched the cold metal wall of her room. She was 25 years old and had never been in love. She had always hoped to choose her own husband someday. Instead, her father was giving her away like a piece of property. The thought made her stomach feel sick. "Princess, your father wants to see you," said a voice behind her. Zara turned around and saw Commander Kane, her father's top officer. He was a big man with gray skin and red eyes, typical for their species. His face looked worried. "Does he want to tell me more about my wonderful new life as a slave wife?" Zara asked. She knew she sounded bitter, but she did not care. Kane's expression softened. "Princess, I know this is hard, but your father believes this marriage will save millions of lives. The Xerians have been threatening to attack our outer colonies. This alliance will protect our people." Zara stood up and walked to her desk. On it were several data tablets containing information she had been studying for years. Most princesses learned about art, music, and dancing. Zara had spent her time learning about different alien species and their military tactics. She found it fascinating how different races fought wars. "Commander, what do you know about humans?" she asked suddenly. Kane looked surprised. "Humans? Not much. They are a young species from a small planet called Earth. Most people think they are weak and primitive." "Why do you ask?" Zara picked up one of her tablets and showed him a file. "I have been reading about them. They are not as weak as everyone thinks. Look at this battle report from the Centauri system. A small human fleet defeated a much larger Repthan armada. The Repthans had better ships and more weapons, but the humans still won." "That must be a mistake," Kane said, looking at the data. "How could primitives defeat the Repthans?" "They used tactics no one expected," Zara explained. "Instead of fighting head-on like most species do, the humans split their forces and attacked from 6 different directions at once. They also used psychological warfare. They broadcast scary messages that made the Repthan soldiers afraid. By the time the battle was over, half the Repthan fleet had surrendered without firing a shot." Kane frowned. "Interesting, but what does this have to do with your marriage?" Before Zara could answer, her door chimed. Another officer entered and bowed. "Princess, the Xerion delegation has arrived. Your groom is requesting to meet you in the ceremonial hall." Zara's heart began to beat faster. She had been dreading this moment for months. She imagined her future husband would be a huge, brutal Xerian warrior with scars and cruel eyes. The Xerians were known for their violence and their treatment of women as property. "Very well," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Let me change into something appropriate." She dismissed the officers and went to her closet. Inside were dozens of beautiful dresses, but she chose a simple blue gown that covered her arms and neck. If she was going to be treated like property, she would at least dress modestly. As she walked through the halls of the palace toward the ceremonial hall, Zara thought about her studies again. She had read about many different alien cultures and their approaches to war and diplomacy. The Xerians always used brute force. The Tralaxians preferred economic pressure. The Vegan Republic relied on superior technology. But humans were different. They were unpredictable. They did things that made no logical sense, and somehow it worked. They refused to give up even when defeat was certain. They found ways to win that no other species would even think to try. Zara reached the doors of the ceremonial hall and paused. Her hands were shaking slightly. She took a deep breath and tried to calm herself. Whatever happened next, she would face it with dignity. The doors opened, and she walked inside. The hall was decorated with flowers and banners from both the Kelthar Empire and the Xerion Coalition. Her father stood on one side with several Kelthar officials. On the other side were the Zerions, tall and menacing in their black uniforms, but Zara barely noticed any of them. Her eyes were fixed on the figure, standing in the center of the room. Her future husband was not a Zerion at all. He was human. The man was about 6 feet tall with brown hair and kind eyes. He wore a simple uniform that Zara did not recognize, but it was clearly not Zerion. His skin was the pale pink color that humans had, not the gray-green of the Zerions. When he saw her looking at him, he smiled slightly and nodded his head in a polite greeting. For the first time in months, Zara felt something other than dread. She felt curiosity, and more importantly, she felt hope. If the Zerions thought they were getting a weak, primitive ally by arranging this marriage, they were about to learn how wrong they could be. She walked toward her future husband with a smile beginning to form on her lips. This marriage might not be the disaster she had feared after all. The human stepped forward and bowed politely. "Princess Zara, I am Captain Jake Morrison. It is an honor to meet you." Zara stared at him in surprise. His voice was calm and respectful, nothing like the harsh tones she expected from a Zerion ally. She glanced at her father, who looked just as confused as she felt. "Captain Morrison," she said carefully. "I was not expecting to meet a human today." Jake smiled. "I imagine not. The Zerions prefer to keep their arrangements private until the last moment." General Thrak, the leader of the Zerion delegation, stepped forward. He was a massive creature with dark green skin and small yellow eyes. "The details of our alliance are not important," he growled. "What matters is that the marriage contract will be honored. This human serves our coalition now." Zara looked between Jake and the Zerion general. Something did not feel right about this situation. Why would a human willingly serve the Zerions? And why would the Zerions trust a member of such a young species with something as important as a political marriage? "Perhaps Princess Zara and I could speak privately before the ceremony," Jake suggested. "It would be good for us to get to know each other." "Unnecessary," General Thrak snapped. "The marriage will proceed as planned. There is nothing to discuss." But Emperor Vorthak raised his hand. "Actually, I think that is a reasonable request. My daughter should have a chance to speak with her future husband." He gestured toward a smaller room off the main hall. "You may have 15 minutes." Zara and Jake walked to the private room while the others waited behind. Once the door closed, Jake's entire demeanor changed. The polite smile disappeared, and his eyes became sharp and alert. "Princess, I need you to listen carefully," he said in a low voice. "Things are not what they seem here." "I figured that much out already," Zara replied. "What is a human doing with the Zerion coalition? And why? Do you really want to marry me?" Jake looked impressed by her directness. "You are smarter than they think you are, aren't you?" "Good. That will make this much easier." He moved closer and spoke even more quietly. "I am not really working for the Zerions. I am here on a mission for the Human Defense Alliance." Zara felt her heart jump. "What kind of mission?" "The kind that could free your people from Zerion threats forever," Jake said. "But I need your help to make it work." Before Zara could respond, Jake continued. "Tell me, Princess, what do you know about human military tactics?" The question caught her off guard, but she answered honestly. "More than most people would expect. I have studied your species for years. Your battle strategies are unusual." "Unusual? How?" Zara thought for a moment. "You do not fight like other species. Most aliens believe in overwhelming force or superior technology. But humans use deception, psychology, and unpredictable tactics. You make your enemies think you are weak, then strike when they least expect it." Jake's eyes lit up. "Exactly, and that is exactly what we are doing here. I do not understand. The Zerions think they are getting a harmless human diplomat and a powerless alien princess," Jake explained. "They believe this marriage will give them influence over your father's empire while keeping both of us under their control. They have no idea what humans are really capable of, and they certainly do not know what you are capable of either." Zara felt a thrill of excitement run through her. "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that we turn this forced marriage, Into something the Xerians will regret for the rest of their lives, Jake said with a grin. How? Jake glanced at the door to make sure no one was listening. Princess, how much do you really know about your father's military situation? Not the official reports, but the real situation. Zara hesitated, then decided to trust him. The Xerians have been demanding tribute from our outer colonies for 2 years. They claim it is payment for protection, but everyone knows it is just extortion. My father agreed to this marriage because General Thrak threatened to attack our mining stations if we refused. And what would happen if the Xerian fleet suddenly found itself under attack from an unexpected direction? They would probably retreat to protect their main bases, Zara said slowly. But who would attack them? They are too strong for most species to challenge. Not if that species knew exactly where to hit them and exactly when to do it, Jake said. Not if they had inside information about Xerion fleet movements, supply lines, and communication codes. Zara stared at him as understanding dawned. You want to use our marriage as a cover for espionage? More than that, Jake said. I want to use it as a cover for revolution. There was a knock on the door. Time is up, came General Thrak's voice from outside. Jake moved closer to Zara. Princess, I need to know right now if you are willing to take a huge risk for a chance to free your people. Zara looked into his eyes and saw something she had never expected to find in a political marriage. She saw a partner, someone who understood that sometimes the best way to win was to let your enemy think they had already won. What do you need me to do? She whispered. Act like an obedient princess who is resigned to her fate, Jake said. Let the Xerians think they have won. Meanwhile, gather every piece of information you can about their military operations. Can you do that? Zara thought about all the years she had spent studying alien military tactics. She thought about her people living in fear of Xerion attacks. She thought about the chance to turn her forced marriage into something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Captain Morrison, she said with a smile, I think you are going to discover that marrying a Kelther princess is the best decision you have ever made. The door opened, and General Thrak looked in impatiently. Are you finished with your conversation? Yes, Zara said, taking Jake's arm. We are ready to proceed with the wedding. As they walked back to the main hall, Zara felt something she had not felt in months. She felt hope. The Xerians thought they were getting 2 helpless prisoners in this marriage. Instead, they were about to get 2 very dangerous enemies working together from the inside. She squeezed Jake's arm slightly and saw him nod in understanding. Their real partnership was just beginning. The wedding ceremony took place 3 days later aboard the massive Xerion flagship, Dominator. The ship was so large that it had its own gardens, ballrooms, and even a small city inside its hull. Zara had never seen anything like it, but she tried not to look impressed. She needed the Xerians to think she was just a frightened princess who had accepted her fate. The ceremony hall was filled with hundreds of guests from different alien species. Most of them were Xerian military officers, but there were also diplomats from races that had made deals with the coalition. Everyone seemed happy about the marriage except the bride and groom, which was exactly what Zara and Jake wanted them to think. General Thrak stood at the front of the hall, reading the marriage contract in the ancient Xerion language. The words were harsh and ugly, talking about duty, obedience, and the joining of 2 empires under Xerion leadership. Zara listened politely while secretly studying the Xerion officers around the room. She noticed that most of them wore small communication devices on their uniforms. The devices had blinking lights that probably meant they were connected to the ship's main computer system. If she could get access to one of those devices, she might be able to learn about Xerion military operations. Jake stood beside her, looking calm and respectful. But Zara noticed that his eyes were constantly moving, studying the room just like she was. When their eyes met for a moment, he gave her a tiny nod. He was gathering intelligence, too. Do you, Princess Zara of the Kelther Empire, agree to join your house with the Xerion coalition through marriage to this human representative? General Thrak asked. I do, Zara said in a small, defeated voice. Several Xerion officers smiled at her apparent sadness. And do you, Captain Jake Morrison, Agree to serve the Coalition faithfully and protect the interests of your new wife's empire under our guidance? I do, Jake replied firmly. General Thrak activated a device that projected legal documents into the air above them. Then, by the authority of the Zerion Coalition, I declare this marriage official. The alliance between our peoples is now sealed. The crowd applauded, but Zara noticed that the applause came mainly from the Zerions. The other alien species looked nervous, as if they were wondering when the Coalition would come for them next. During the reception, Zara and Jake were separated and taken to different groups of guests. This gave Zara a chance to listen to conversations around her. She learned that the Zerions were planning to expand their territory soon. They had already chosen their next targets, the Altair Mining Consortium and the Vegan Republic. Your new husband seems very cooperative, said Commander Vex, a female Zerion officer with a scarred face. Most humans we encounter are more troublesome. Perhaps he understands that cooperation is smarter than resistance, Zara replied carefully. My people have learned the same lesson. Commander Vex smiled coldly. Good. The Coalition values practical thinking over foolish pride. Across the room, Jake was having his own conversations with Zerion military leaders. They were treating him like a useful pet, asking him questions about human technology and military capabilities. Jake answered their questions honestly, but Zara noticed he was being very selective about which questions he chose to answer. Human ships are not very advanced compared to yours, she heard him say to a group of officers. We rely mainly on surprise attacks and hit-and-run tactics because we cannot match your firepower. The Zerions nodded approvingly, clearly pleased to hear that humans knew their place. What they did not know was that Jake was giving them information that would help them underestimate human capabilities when the real fighting started. After several hours of celebration, General Thrak announced that the newlyweds would be given a luxury ship for their honeymoon journey. The ship Golden Star has been prepared for your use, he told them. You will have 2 weeks to enjoy yourselves before returning to begin your new duties. Zara and Jake thanked him politely and made their way to the docking bay. The Golden Star was a beautiful vessel with elegant curves and golden decorations. It looked like a pleasure craft, but Zara suspected it was also equipped with monitoring devices so the Zerions could watch their every move. Once they were aboard and the ship had departed from the Dominator, Jake began checking the walls and furniture for hidden cameras and listening devices. He found 7 of them in the first 10 minutes. They are definitely watching us, he whispered to Zara. We need to be very careful about what we say and do. Over the next few hours, they played the role of newlyweds getting to know each other. They had dinner together, walked around the ship, and made small talk about their families and backgrounds. But they also began communicating in other ways. Jake showed Zara how to use hand signals and facial expressions to convey information without speaking. Zara taught him some of the subtle gestures that Kelthar nobles use to communicate during formal ceremonies. Together, they developed a way to have entire conversations without saying a word. On their second day aboard the Golden Star, Jake made an important discovery. While exploring the ship's systems, he found that it had a hidden communication array much more powerful than anything a pleasure craft should need. The Zerions had not just given them a honeymoon ship, they had given them a mobile command center. This is perfect, Jake signaled to Zara using their new hand language. We can contact my people without the Zerions knowing. That night, while the ship's automatic systems indicated they were sleeping, Jake activated the hidden communication array. He sent a coded message to coordinates in deep space, far from any known star system. The response came back within an hour. Admiral Lisa Park here. Good to hear from you, Jake. Are you in position? Affirmative, Jake whispered into the transmitter. The princess is cooperative and has valuable intelligence. What is the status of the fleet? We are ready to move. On your signal. How much time do you need? Jake looked at Zara, who held up 5 fingers. 5 days, he said. Can you maintain position until then? Confirmed. Send us target information as soon as you have it. Jake ended the transmission and turned to Zara. Now comes the hard part, he signaled. We need to get detailed information about Zerion fleet, positions and supply lines. Do you have any ideas? Zara smiled and pulled out a small device she had taken from Commander Vex during the wedding reception. The commander had been so busy gloating about Zerion power that she had not noticed when Zara bumped into her and borrowed her communication device. I thought this might be useful, Zara signaled back. Jake stared at the device in amazement. It was a high-level Zerion military communicator with access to fleet coordination networks. With this, they could learn everything they needed to know about Zerion operations. Princess, he signaled, I think I am starting to understand why the Zerions should be afraid of you. Zara grinned and activated the device. Data began flowing across its screen, showing the locations of Zerion ships throughout the sector. For the first time since this whole situation began, she felt like she was in control. The Zerions thought they had gained 2 valuable assets through this marriage. They had no idea that they had actually given their enemies exactly what they needed, to destroy them. For 3 days, Zara and Jake worked together to decode the information from Commander Vex's stolen device. They learned more about Zerion military operations than most coalition members ever knew. The Zerions had supply bases hidden throughout, 12 star systems, and their main fleet was split into 4 separate battle groups that could combine quickly if needed. Look at this, Zara whispered, pointing to data on the device's screen. They were in the ship's bathroom, the only room where Jake had not found any listening devices. The Zerions keep their fuel supplies at these 3 stations. If those stations were destroyed, their entire fleet would be stranded. Jake studied the information carefully. And these communication relays here, he said, pointing to another section of data. If we could take those out at the same time, their battle groups would not be able to coordinate with each other. How many ships does your fleet have? Zara asked. 47 combat vessels, Jake replied. Not nearly enough to fight the Zerions in a direct battle, but if we can hit their weak points at exactly the right time, it might work, Zara finished. When do we contact your admiral? Before Jake could answer, an alarm sounded throughout the ship. They quickly left the bathroom and went to the main control room, where the ship's computer was displaying an urgent message. Attention newlyweds, came General Thrax's voice over the communication system. We have received reports of suspicious activity in your area. Please proceed immediately to the Zerion base at Kepler Station for a security inspection. Jake and Zara looked at each other. This was not part of the original plan. Do we have a choice? Zara asked. Jake checked the ship's navigation system. Not really. They have activated remote control. We are already changing course toward Kepler Station. Is this a trap? Zara wondered. Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe they are just being careful. Either way, we need to be ready for anything. That night, while the ship traveled toward Kepler Station, Jake sent an emergency message to Admiral Park. He used the hidden communication array and a special code that would make the message look like random space noise to anyone who intercepted it. Admiral, we may have been compromised. Zerions are bringing us to Kepler Station for inspection. If you do not hear from me within 24 hours, begin the attack without us. The response came back quickly. Understood, Jake. We will be ready. Do not take unnecessary risks. The next morning, the Golden Star arrived at Kepler Station. The station was huge, with docking bays for hundreds of ships and defensive weapons that could destroy entire fleets. As their ship was guided into a docking bay, Zara and Jake saw Zerion soldiers waiting for them. Remember, Jake said quietly, we are just a happy married couple who do not know anything about military secrets. General Thrax was waiting for them as they left their ship. With him were a dozen armed guards and a thin alien with large eyes, who was carrying a device that Zara did not recognize. Welcome to Kepler Station, General Thrax said with a cold smile. I hope you do not mind this small delay in your honeymoon, but we have received some disturbing reports. What kind of reports? Jake asked, sounding confused and worried. Reports that human ships have been detected in this sector, the general replied. Of course, you would not know anything about that, would you? Human ships? Jake looked genuinely surprised. General, I told you when we made our agreement that I left my old life behind. I have no contact with other humans. The thin alien with the device stepped forward. This is Dr. Skrell, our chief interrogator, General Thrak explained. His machine can detect lies by reading brain patterns. You will not mind if we ask you a few questions while Dr. Skrell monitors your responses? Zara felt her heart start beating faster, but she tried to stay calm. Jake had warned her that something like this might happen, and they had prepared for it. Of course, Jake said. We have nothing to hide. Dr. Skrell activated his device and pointed it at Jake. Are you in contact with any human military forces? He asked. No, Jake replied firmly. The device beeped once, indicating his answer was true. Zara was confused until she realized what Jake had done. He was not technically in contact with human military forces at that moment. He had sent his message to Admiral Park the night before, but he was not actively communicating with them right now. Have you provided any information about Zirion operations to human agents? Dr. Skrell continued. No, Jake said again. Another beep indicated truth. Again, Jake was being technically honest. He had not provided information to human agents. He had provided it to Admiral Park directly, and she was not an agent. She was a military commander. Dr. Skrell turned to Zara. Princess, have you been helping this human spy on Zirion activities? I do not know anything about spying, Zara replied. I am just trying to make the best of a marriage I did not want. The device beeped, confirming her statement was true. Zara had been careful to phrase her answer correctly. She really did not know anything about spying in the technical sense, since what she and Jake were doing was military intelligence gathering, not spying. General Thrak looked disappointed by the results. Very well. It seems you are telling the truth, but we will be keeping a closer watch on you from now on. As they were escorted back to their ship, Zara noticed something important. The docking bay was full of Zirion warships, but most of them looked like they were being prepared for departure, not arrival. The Zirions were getting ready to move their fleet somewhere. Once they were back aboard the Golden Star, Jake immediately began working on the hidden communication array again. We need to warn Admiral Park about what we saw, he told Zara. The Zirions are mobilizing their forces. But before he could send a message, the ship's alarm system activated again. This time it was not General Thrak's voice they heard. It was the automated battle alert signal. All ships prepare for combat, the station's computer announced. Unknown vessels approaching from Sector 7. All personnel to battle stations. Jake and Zara looked at each other and smiled. It looks like Admiral Park got tired of waiting, Jake said. Through the ship's viewing ports, they could see the Zirion fleet scrambling to launch from the docking bays. But something was wrong with their coordination. Ships were bumping into each other and some were launching without proper formation. What is happening to them? Zara asked. Jake checked the ship's sensors and grinned. Admiral Park is not just attacking. She is jamming their communications. The Zirions cannot talk to each other, so they cannot coordinate their defense. Suddenly, explosions began lighting up the space around Kepler Station, but they were not coming from the direction of the approaching human fleet. They were coming from inside the station itself. The fuel supplies, Zara realized. Someone is attacking the fuel storage areas. Not someone, Jake said with satisfaction. Admiral Park brought friends. Human special forces teams must have infiltrated the station before the main attack began. As they watched, the Zirion fleet began to break apart. Some ships tried to fight the approaching humans, while others attempted to retreat to protect their supply lines. The careful organization that made the Zirions so dangerous was falling apart under human tactics they had never encountered before. Jake, Zara said suddenly, we need to get out of here before they realize who we really are. Already working on it, Jake replied, activating the ship's engines. Hold on, Princess, our honeymoon is about to get very interesting. The Golden Star broke free from the docking bay, just as Kepler Station's main reactor began to overload. Behind them, the Zirion stronghold erupted in flames while human ships swarmed through the debris, hunting down the scattered coalition forces. Welcome to human warfare, Jake said as they escaped into open space. Step 1. Make your enemy think they have you trapped. Step 2. Turn their trap into your weapon. The destruction of Kepler Station was only the beginning. Over the next 6 hours, Admiral Park's fleet struck 12 different Zarian targets simultaneously across 4 star systems. Every attack was perfectly timed and precisely executed, hitting fuel depots, communication relays, and supply convoys exactly when the Zarians were least prepared to defend them. Jake piloted the Golden Star through the chaos, while Zara used Commander Vex's stolen device to monitor Zarian communications. What they heard was panic and confusion. Battle Group 3 has lost contact with headquarters, one transmission reported. Fuel reserves at 17%. Supply Convoy 7 Alpha is under attack, came another voice. Unknown human vessels, using stealth technology. Request immediate reinforcements at Vega Prime, a third voice called. Our defensive satellites have been disabled by some kind of computer virus. They are falling apart, Zara observed with satisfaction. Their whole strategy depends on overwhelming force and coordinated attacks, but they cannot coordinate anything when their communications are jammed and their supplies are gone. Jake nodded as he changed course toward the Kelthar home system. That is the thing about bullies. They are only strong when everything goes according to their plan. The moment something unexpected happens, they do not know how to adapt. Where are we going? Zara asked. To finish what we started, Jake replied. Your father's empire needs to know that they are free to fight back now. And the Zirions need to learn what happens when they threaten human allies. The journey to Kelthar Prime took 8 hours. When they arrived, they found the system in chaos. Zarion ships were trying to retreat from their positions around the planet, but they were being harassed by small groups of Kelthar fighters who had apparently decided to join the rebellion. My people are fighting, Zara said with pride. They must have heard about the attacks on Zarion bases. Jake activated the ship's communication system and sent a message to the planet's surface. Emperor Vorthak, this is Captain Morrison. I am returning with your daughter and some very good news. The response came from Commander Kane. Captain Morrison, thank the stars you are safe. We have been receiving reports of battles throughout the sector. What is happening out there? Freedom is happening, Jake replied. The Zarian coalition is finished. Their fleet is scattered, their supply lines are cut, and their bases are burning. Your people can stop paying tribute and start defending themselves. Within an hour, Jake and Zara were standing in the same ceremonial hall where they had met, just 1 week earlier. But now the room was filled with celebrating Kelthar nobles and military officers instead of nervous diplomats. Emperor Vorthak embraced his daughter warmly. I was so worried about you, he said. When the attack started, I thought the Zirians might take their anger out on you. Father, the Zirians had bigger problems to worry about, Zara said with a smile. It turns out that marrying a human was the best thing that could have happened to our empire. Admiral Park arrived the next day with most of the human fleet. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. When she met Zara, she shook her hand firmly and said, Princess, your intelligence gathering made all the difference. We could not have succeeded without knowing exactly where to hit them. What is the current status of the Zarian forces? Emperor Vorthak asked during a strategy meeting in the palace. Completely broken, Admiral Park reported. Their main fleet has split into dozens of small groups trying to find safe places to hide. Most of their leaders are dead or missing. General Thrax's flagship was destroyed during the attack on their central command base. And what about their other conquered territories? Commander Kane inquired. Revolting, Jake said with satisfaction. Once word spread that the Zarian military had been defeated, subject races throughout the sector started fighting back. The coalition does not have enough ships left to maintain control over their empire. Zara stood up and walked to the large star map displayed on the wall. So what happens next? Do we just let the Zarians retreat and rebuild? That would be a mistake, Admiral Park said. Bullies like the Zarians do not learn from defeat. They just get angry and look for revenge. We need to make sure they never threaten anyone again. What do you suggest? Emperor Vorthak asked. Jake joined Zara at the star map. A permanent alliance, he said. Humans, Kelthar, and every other race that was threatened by the Zirions. We combine our fleets, share our technology, and make it clear that anyone who tries to conquer their neighbors will face all of us together. The Xerians built their power by dividing their enemies and conquering them one at a time, Zara added. But if all their potential victims work together, the bullies become the ones who are outnumbered. Over the following weeks, representatives from a dozen different species arrived at Kelthar Prime to discuss the new alliance. The Altair Mining Consortium brought their advanced drilling technology. The Vegan Republic contributed their agricultural knowledge. The Trilaxians offered their economic expertise. But it was the humans who provided the most important element: the willingness to fight when necessary and the tactical knowledge to win against larger enemies. You know, Zara said to Jake one evening as they walked through the palace gardens, when I first saw you at our wedding, I thought you might be my salvation. I had no idea you would end up saving the entire sector. Jake smiled and took her hand. I thought I was just on a military mission to gather intelligence. I never expected to find a partner who was smarter and braver than most of my fellow officers. Is that what we are? Zara asked. Partners? Well, we are legally married, Jake pointed out. And we do make a pretty good team. I was thinking, we might make this arrangement permanent. Zara laughed. You mean actually stay married instead of just pretending? Why not? You understand military strategy better than anyone I know. I could use someone like that watching my back. And you, Zara said, are the only person who has ever made me feel like I have some control over my own destiny. That is worth keeping around. They stopped walking and looked up at the stars. 6 months ago, those stars had been filled with Xerian warships threatening to destroy anyone who opposed them. Now they represented freedom and the promise of a future where smaller races could defend themselves against bullies. You know what the best part is? Jake said. What? The Xerians still do not understand what happened to them. They keep sending diplomatic messages asking for negotiations and trying to figure out how a primitive species like humanity managed to defeat them. Zara grinned. Should we tell them? Maybe someday, Jake replied. For now, let them wonder. It will keep them afraid to try anything like this again. Hand in hand, they walked back toward the palace where representatives from the new alliance were planning the future of their sector. Behind them, the stars twinkled peacefully in a sky that was finally free from the shadow of the Xerian coalition. The forced marriage that was supposed to enslave them had instead become the foundation for the most powerful alliance the galaxy had ever seen. And at its heart were a human captain and an alien princess who had discovered that sometimes the best partnerships are the ones that start with impossible circumstances and end with changing the universe.